Okay, for example, your guest destination's a little bit off mark, but I'm going to go live anyway.
Yep, go.
It's not letting me go live with your destination, so you're going to have to remove it, I think.
I will. I apologise.
That's okay. I don't know if I can click remove myself or not. Let me see. If I kick you out, Mark, come back in.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Have you done it?
I did. I think we're live.
Good.
So, okay, everybody. This is John Haller. I'm going to try to. This is difficult to do without a staff and everything. So I'm just going to make sure that we're actually running on YouTube. Brian, this is John Haller. Welcome to our little program this morning, a live update from Israel. So, Brian, just kind of tell it. This is Brian Schraeger, by the way, lives in Israel. And just kind of tell us what's been going on over the past week. You know, I was kind of looking through my notes. We did an update a week ago, and it's really only been about a week since all of this started, right?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. It seems like it's been much longer.
It seems like it's been a year. And so just kind of tell us recent updates and kind of like what it's been living with these nightly missile barrages from Iran.
Everybody here is sleep deprived. I mean, we're all just rubbing our eyes, blurry-eyed, and frustrated. And, you know, when you don't get enough sleep, emotions get distorted. Sometimes thinking gets distorted. So you just have to be very, very careful. I find myself having to be very, very careful not to trust my emotional responses to things like last night, just as I was going to sleep.
Oh,
oy vey.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. Go ahead. You were just trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, I was trying to go to sleep in Jerusalem, and I really just had turned out the light. I was falling asleep, and the siren went off. You know, on my phone, I've got 3 apps. I've got Homefront Command, Red Alert, and another one, and they all go off at once. It's like, and a light flash, my camera light flashes. So that means, first of all, we're no longer getting 30-minute warnings. We now only get 10-minute warnings, which is good. So it gives you enough time to get up, put your clothes on, go to the bathroom. You need to go to the bathroom, and then go down to the mamad, the shelter. It's just here we go again. Now, last night when this happened, we got the alert, but we waited until we got the notice that an alert was likely to come, and so we waited a few minutes, and sure enough, boy, the sirens started to go off all around us. So the whole building we're in was immediately down in the shelter. The nice thing is our shelter, which had not had internet, and now has internet. So now we can kind of keep track of what's going on while we're in the shelter.
So tell us a little bit. Just put up I use the Zophar Red Alert app, but it kind of shows this is every night this has been happening. Am I right?
Yes.
Because you post them regularly in one of the groups we belong to on WhatsApp, and you know it's sort of like if we're looking forward to the day when you're not posting these every night.
Oh, no kidding. And for me, it's a way to cope. You know, at least I can tell people what's going on. Being able to report it, tell people what's happening, for me is a way to give me something to do, and I find that helpful. But lots of times, I'm sure you also get questions about what does this mean with all of these red dots on the map, and what it indicates is that these are areas of the country that have received an alert that a missile might land in their vicinity. And this morning there was, I think, only 5 missiles or so, 5 or 6 missiles. But when they're launched, we don't know exactly where they're going to land. And so Israel has a method for determining that it could be in one of these areas. So it sends people all in every area you see there on the map. We're sent to shelters across the country.
Yeah. And so tell me, maybe just let me jump forward just a little bit, because there seems to be some confusion among people here when the president of the United States and the IDF and Israeli Air Force people say that Israel has air superiority in Iran, but then we see these ballistic missiles coming in, and kind of tell us what the difference is there and why this is not proof that Israel does not have air superiority in Iran.
Well, we have air superiority without a doubt in Iran. Pardon me, but that's a different matter than being able to stop all these missiles that come in. And in fact, last night, for the first time, I believe it's for the first time, Iran launched its huge Sajil missile, which I think weighs something like 30,000 pounds and can carry up to a 1,500 kilogram warhead. And I think it got here in like 7 minutes, because it's a solid fuel rocket. So there wasn't a lot of time to prepare, and they're not easy to intercept. And even when they are intercepted, they break up. And if you look at debris, you've got a huge part of the missile you see that falls. There's one that video I saw just an hour or two ago of a debris, so-called debris, falling on a car in a parking lot outside of an apartment building. Just smashed the front end of the car. So when they are hit, they don't just disappear. They break up in big pieces when they are big rockets.
So, so tell us, I mean, there was a hospital hit last night in Beersheba, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the Soroka Hospital, and it's one of Israel's best hospitals in the country. It's huge, and it provides services for the whole Negev, southern Israel area. In fact, I was just there, about 8 days ago. I was at an Airbnb literally next to this hospital, looking down on it, and so it's just kind of interesting to know that that's the place that was hit, and it was hit hard. The miracle is that nobody was killed, and I think there was only one minor injury. And the reason nobody was killed, well, God intervened, I think, and he alerted. He had the director, one of the directors of the Health Ministry of Health, and maybe director of the hospital there, had looked over the situation just yesterday and instructed that all patients had to be moved out of the hospital into a secure area. And it's only because of that decision that many dozens of people were not killed by today's strike.
So, what's over the past week, what's the approximate death toll within Israel from these rocket attacks?
I don't have the current data. I believe the death toll has been minimal ever since a number of people died on the second day or so back, maybe perhaps on the 14th or 15th. People have been injured, but ever since an apartment complex, and I can't remember the name of the location, Khan Yunis maybe, was hit and people were killed there, Israelis have been paying more attention to the sirens and what the health ministry tells them to do. So it's easy at first to have an attitude of, I'm going to stay out on my porch and look up and watch these rockets come in. Well, you're playing Russian roulette when you do that. I've done it. I'm not doing it now. I go down to the shelter. And, right now, the big concern is if, inasmuch as Khamenei and his gang of imams feel cornered in Iran, what might they do? And we actually began to see a bit of that this morning. They did launch their really big rockets, probably a couple of them anyway, because there were two hits here in Holon and in Beersheba. So that's the concern. That also gets me down the steps into our bomb shelter very quickly when the alarm goes off here, because he could send some very big rockets with big payloads.
Right. So yeah, and I have some graphics, but I don't know that I'll have time to put them up today. But there's a tremendous there's some very large missiles that Iran has not used that they've claimed that they have, and I mean, some of these are multiple entry. They can have 12, 15, 25 separate warheads as they enter, and nobody knows for sure whether these are actually operational or this is just part of a propaganda campaign. But you can't say, oh well, we think that's a propaganda campaign when they start flying in. Did I lose Brian?
Yes, John, we've lost Brian at the moment. I have to say you're doing absolutely brilliantly, considering we're talking to dear Brian in Jerusalem and all the internet challenges, because there will be quite a strain on that as people are finding out news and trying to talk to people abroad. So we're just wait. I think one of the questions what you've said is very, very important, because these missiles are then going up into space, coming down, and then there's a conversation that they've fired maybe a minimum of 400 up to 500 missiles, John. I mean, it beggars belief, doesn't it, that this is the rocketry that they've been firing since last Thursday night.
Right. Yeah, it's been a constant barrage. So we're trying to get Brian back. We apologize for the. This is the problems reality with live streaming and him being in a. He's having trouble getting back in. So we'll. I'm not sure. I think we may be getting him back here momentarily. Again, we apologize.
Back.
Okay.
Here he is. Welcome back, Brian. Thank you. Well done. Well done, sir.
The vagaries or whatever, the demons of live streaming with somebody literally in a war zone. So Brian, you mentioned, and I've talked to people in Israel that one of our mutual friends, I think her daughter said, we're not going to get killed by a missile, but we're going to die of exhaustion.
Yeah, that's a pretty common perspective right now. Well, I had a friend call me on FaceTime who lives here, and it was just nice to talk to someone and realize they too are going through this and feeling the physical and emotional impact of not having enough sleep, and also just the whole reality here, which is crazy.
So what's the sort of physical situation? Are stores closed? I know schools are closed right now, and the school year ends the end of June. I doubt that the schools are going to reopen this year. That's probably until
yesterday, the whole nation was under an emergency alert or shutdown. And we still are, but the guidelines have changed just a bit. Some a number of people can go back to work, but the schools, as you said, are not yet open. This actually has presented a problem for parents here who have children, right? And they go back to work, but their kids can't go back to school. What do? It presents a problem. So, Israel's trying to allow people to carry on with life as much as possible, but the reality is all of us are a bit stuck right now. In fact, the state of emergency did not even allow last Saturday for synagogues, for shuls to meet. So there were no public gatherings allowed, including going to shul on Shabbat.
That's kind of a rather extreme measure for Israel. I mean, Shabbat is
very much so. Yeah,
it's sacred, for lack of a better
None
term.
of my Orthodox observant friends complained, however. They readily complied.
Yeah, it is a war situation.
Well, and also from the Jewish perspective, this is an issue of preserving life, and life is paramount. And if there's one thing that trumps everything else, including observing Shabbat by not being on your phones, which normally you would not be, But if it's a matter of life, then you get on your phone. So on October 7th, I was with an observant family, and they were all on their phones. And this last Saturday, too, it was very common for Orthodox Jews who normally keep Shabbat, which includes no use of electronics, nonetheless using their phones last Saturday.
So, interesting. So I have a map up. This is from, I think, INSS map of the areas that have been struck by Israel. There were reports this morning that Israel struck, I don't know, 100 targets overnight in Iran. And it appears there are reports that a couple F-35s were shot down early on. Is that
No, it didn't happen.
accurate or not?
That was fake news.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. So I have a bunch of Iranian websites, and Brian, I don't know if you saw it. The one of the main websites that we use a lot was live streaming when an Israeli missile or bomb hit the studio.
Yeah.
And there's been some rather humorous memes made up on the internet about that. But, but so Israel appears to have air superiority. I just want to kind of go over. I'm going to share. This is just one entity that seems to be doing a pretty good job of covering things is the Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
And so these are the reports. These are some of the videos and reports that are on the Wall Street Journal website this morning. Attacks overnight, funeral for the IRGC people that have been killed, the nuclear scientists that have been killed. I think the number is in excess of 40 or 41 of those people have been killed. And we could do a whole program on just that alone. But one of the things, so right now in the United States, whether you're aware of it or not, there is tremendous division among Trump supporters over what do we do. So we have the usual, I would call them the progeny of the Patrick Buchanan wing of American conservatism, that Israel's the source of all the problems and wars in the Middle East, and we should get out of there. And if we don't, and that's received tremendous play on major conservative channels such as Steve Bannon's War Room, Tucker Carlson, or as we refer to him as Tucker Carlson now. Was on there the other day spewing this. He did an interview. Tucker Carlson did an interview with Ted Cruz. Brian, have you seen that interview?
I saw a clip from it. I've not seen the whole thing.
So if you people aren't aware of it, Tucker Carlson interviewed Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a big Israel supporter in the U.S. Senate. And the contrast between Tucker's interview of Israeli supporters versus what I would call the Jew-hating supporters like Gunther Isaac and others, which were Jeffrey Sachs, a communist, sustainable development goals guy, it was just on Tucker the other day, and he gets these softball questions. Ted Cruz comes on, and immediately Tucker is like, well, what's the population of Iran, Senator Cruz? And Ted Cruz says, well, I don't know. And he goes, you don't know? And you're attacking the country, So it's like, oh, what kind of car does Khomeini drive? How old is the car? Does he get it serviced regularly? You don't know this? It's questions along that line. And it's, and excuse my rather crude imitation of Carlson, but I have major problems with this. And Brian, my X feed, and I don't know if this is true of you, is just full of outright Jew hatred. The Israel are Nazis, and it's unbelievable. I mean, and I don't know if I'm in some kind of algorithm where they're trying to train me and change my opinion. It's not working, but it's just like a flood, a tsunami, and everything. So right now, there's a lot of controversy in the United States, and I'm going to ask you for your. Let me summarize, and I'll ask you for your opinion. Trump has been very direct. I've been talking for 20 years, he says, about Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's the policy of this. And then all the America First people say, well, we didn't vote for this. This is going to destroy the conservative movement in the United States. And Trump says, listen, I came up with the
Our
term
connection
America
on my end has slowed down just a bit. If you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Happening all day. There's been a lot of air activity over.
Right.
I'm in Jerusalem, over Jerusalem, and I have to assume these are aircraft going back and forth to Iran.
Okay.
There is, of course, an ongoing issue of the war with Hamas. That continues. It's not in the headlines right now, but it continues. And in fact, Israel here is even more on alert in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria and the Palestinian territories, because Tehran is attempting to provoke its satellite proxies, including Palestinians, to attack Israel. It's not been successful in terms of getting like Hezbollah. Hezbollah has disappeared. They're quiet. And even the Houthis have not been heard from. I mean, before this began, they were sending missiles against Israel almost every day. Very mad. But since the war began, we've not heard much from them. Oh, anyway, right now, then, so all this came up. Well, the signal got bad, and I was hearing a jet go on overhead, and again, all day long.
So the word here is Trump is deciding whether he's going to authorize U.S. assets to be used in the attack. What's the feeling there in Israel about what's going on? I mean, where is Israel at on that? And do they maybe care or not care whether Trump gets the U.S. involved?
Well, the Jerusalem Post has been publishing articles to the effect that it has been talking to insiders, unnamed insiders in the Trump administration, who say that he's all but authorized an attack. He certainly has moved 3 carrier groups, or is moving them, to the Middle East. And so Israel thinks he will come in. But, he's Trump, so he might not. We hope he will. Especially what we really need are America's 30,000 ton bunker buster bombs that they drop. They have to be dropped from I think 30,000 feet or more. And then they first of all they go right into the rock, and they penetrate the rock, but they don't explode when they impact. They have to go down a certain depth, and then they explode. So it's thought that at the Fordo site in Iran, we will need perhaps 2 of them. One to initially go in and shake things up, and a second to follow, and hopefully put the Fordo site out of commission.
So I'm trying to get you off of there it is. So just so people know, there's a couple of different massive ordinances. There's one called the Moab, the mother of all bombs. That's about a 30,000 pound bomb with 20-some thousand pounds of explosives. But it explodes above ground and sort of sucks all the oxygen out. That was used one time in Afghanistan near a cave complex. That's different than these GBU 57s, or what they're called. They're MOPs, and the mother of something ordnance that's used. These are the bunker busters. The U.S. is the only Air Force that can deliver those. They have to be delivered by a B-2 bomber, 30,000
Exactly.
feet, and they've really never been used in combat operations, and so we really don't know exactly. Are we being subjected to a lot of hype about how good these things are or not? And I'll just tell you, I don't want to occupy all the time. As Pam and I took a trip recently, and we were driving around the West, I kept looking at these. The terrain in the Western United States is in many respects very similar to the terrain in Iran, where these facilities like Fodor are located. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, like, I don't even know if a massive bomb is going to be, you would have to drop, I don't think 2 of them would get there. I think you're going to have to drop 6 or 7 in the exact same spot to get down. And then you hope that you hit something that's target worthy, because we don't really know the exact layout. Well, I don't think we know the exact layout. I wouldn't put anything past the Mossad, given the nature of the operations that have been done here so far. So I guess what's the thinking there among security people about how much does Iran have left? How many launchers do they have left? What's the thinking there about that?
Well, the feeling, looking at the evidence, is that Iran has been severely hindered in its ability to launch a large number of rockets. All you have to do is look at the number of rockets that were first launched against Israel on the 13th, and 13th for us, and see what's happened in subsequent waves of attack. And the last few days, it's been 4, 5, 6 missiles. So they've gone from 40, 50, and then maybe in the first day in 4 waves, there were like several hundred. And now we're down to 4 or 5 each time that there's an alarm. This last alarm at the beginning of the over 12 hours ago now, it did include, like we said earlier, these Subgil rockets, these big suckers with a big payload, and they also got here very, very quickly. They're hard to intercept because they go up into above the atmosphere, and then they shoot straight down, and they're quite devastating. So Israel at this point feels like yes, we're hindering their ability to launch these rockets, but they still have them, and if they can't get them off, they're now going to be probably firing their bigger weapons. And they can also cause a lot of havoc, even though they're not getting as many off the ground. Now, there is some concern, too, that even with 60% enriched uranium, it might be possible for Tehran to construct a dirty nuclear bomb. Yeah. And if, inasmuch as Khamenei and his gang of leaders in Tehran feel cornered, there's no telling what they might do. So the end game is not entirely clear here. It looks like Israel's going to have to be involved, at least for a while, in terms of maintaining its air superiority over Iran and supervising what's going on from the air.
Brian, John opened with this question, which was why about air superiority and why are the ballistic missiles still firing? And there's been a figure, was it that maybe they've actually fired up to something like 500 ballistic missiles at you, which is unbelievable. But that also raises the case of why there's been this preemptive action, because Israel has been concerned with the amount of ballistic missiles they have and their aim to actually produce more and increase that, as well as the nuclear program. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, you broke up just a bit, so I'm not entirely sure I caught the whole gist of your question. Your concern or your question has to do with why is Israel not?
Don't worry, Brian. I was just saying that the concern has always been, as well as the nuclear program, about the amount of ballistic missiles that they have, and then they want to produce more. and they had a target with that as well.
Again, I'm sorry you're breaking up. If you can
Don't worry.
text me the gist of that, of your thought, that would be helpful.
Brian,
Okay,
can
well,
you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question was, like, what I guess maybe the question I would rephrase a little bit is,
Now you're breaking up. I'm sorry. Now you're
Okay.
breaking up too for me. Sorry about that.
I guess maybe focus on the psychological impact of what's going on with these bombs. It's almost like a terrorism on the whole country.
I don't know if you can hear me, but on my end it sounds like.
Yeah. Go ahead, just talk. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, just talk. I don't know quite what else to say. I'm dealing with tiredness too. I would like to say though that for those who are praying for Israel, I believe we're seeing prayers being answered in everything that's happened. In Israel's success in going in and launching the attack, taking out launchers at the beginning, that severely hindered Iran's ability to fire missiles at Israel, and it postponed the first wave by a number of hours. Yes, it's been tragic to see the people injured and killed here, but it could be so much worse. Like even this morning at that hospital in Beersheba, the fact that nobody was killed, that's a miracle. I think it's fair to say that prayers for Israel being answered, and the God of Israel is making a way for Israel where there's not been a way. There are all kinds of risks that Israel was facing in launching this. Could it trigger World War III? Who else might respond? And it's pretty much, that's all been muted in terms of China, Russia, and others. There have been a lot of voices yelling and complaining that Israel's doing something bad, but nobody's really jumping into the fight. So
well,
I would like to acknowledge that prayers are being answered. God is hearing prayers, the prayers of those who are interceding for His uniquely chosen human family.
Amen. And Brian, I may put the comment in the chat. I put a couple of comments in the chat, but I think there are many countries that are relieved that this is going on, but they may not publicly say that for a variety of different reasons.
Well, certainly countries like Saudi Arabia, they've publicly condemned it, but they've been helping out behind the scenes. So they don't like Iran. They're not happy with what Iran. They don't want Iran to be go nuclear. So yeah, they're cheering it on, but they have to do it quietly behind the scenes. A lot of these Middle East neighbors are doing the same thing. And by the way, another answer to prayer is all that led up to this. Our ability to basically eliminate, or all but eliminate, Hezbollah in Lebanon. That opened up the door to for Bashar Assad to be removed, and as a result, Israel has had access in making these flights to Iran, going over Lebanon, and then Syria, and then Iraq, and then going into Iran. So they've had airspace. They've had a pathway which they would not have had before. So there's a lot of risk here, and it's an interesting time to think, for me at least, to think about how our responsibility and God's sovereignty interact. We're called on to pray, and we're called on to plan, make plans, but what does Psalm say? The mind of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Plans can change. We are to make plans. And Israel has done a brilliant job and is very, very diligent over many years to make plans to allow this to happen, what's going on right now, for the degree of success it's had. But those plans are useless without God's blessing. And that somehow is where human responsibility and God's sovereignty interact. We plan, we do what we must do, but in the end, we are entirely dependent on God for the outcome. I'm often reminded these days of what the in Joshua. You know, Joshua went in and he conquered the land and all these battles he did, and at the end, it was God, you did it all. You know, and we praise you for what you did. Well, wait a minute, didn't you go in with all these soldiers and fight all these things and you had to go out. You couldn't just sit at home and watch it happen. And yeah, and so they did. They went out and fought. But in the end, God was given all the credit, all the glory. And it's interesting. So and also, you know, we have a responsibility, a human responsibility to pray, and as much as we are able to do so, so we intercede. And I don't understand it, but somehow that plays a huge role in how God acts. So we're participating in his defense of his people.
So, Brian, can you kind of update us on what the situation is in Judea and Samaria with regard to Iranian terror cells there?
Well, I can only tell you what I'm hearing. I don't have a lot of data, but I'm hearing that there is a problem. There have been cells that have been provoked here for many months. In fact, ever since October 7, there has been, at least reportedly, an attempt by Iran to finance and stir up trouble. And Israel has been going in and fighting it's not been in the headlines, but we've been sending in troops into terror centers in Judea and in the Palestinian territories, like Jenin, for example, which are known hotspots for these groups. And we go in and we do operations, and they have been intense and ongoing, but not talked about. Today, my understanding is that we continue to keep our guard up in this area, and that even the Palestinian Authority is helping. In fact, they're always helping. It's one of the great secrets is that the Palestinian Authority has partnered with Israel for its security basically from the beginning. So on the one hand, it condemns the Jewish state, but on the other hand, it is working with it to provide intelligence so that the Israelis people didn't have.
Okay, so we got a little bit of a freeze on Brian. We're going to kind of wait till his internet kind of catches up. Our friend Brian and I know a guy named Jonathan Spire, very good friend of Brian's, and he had a good article in the Jerusalem Post last week about Iran rebuilding terror cells in Syria, using terror organizations, because Iran's not going away. I mean, and I will say my personal opinion is that the concern, and I think Victor Davis Hanson's got some commentary out there today. My concern has been, I think people in Israel's concern has been, if there is a regime change, what does it change to?
Yeah.
And I think you saw that concern of Israel's expressed in what can only be described as a decapitation strike of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And even a new guy was appointed, and he's been taken out, and a bunch of nuclear scientists have been taken out. So at least there's been some attempt to shape how that might go. And there's a lot of reports. There's a guy named Tusi, Tousi, an Iranian, who's doing a great job on live updates. If you want to follow him, Tusi TV.
Yep, Maya Tusi, brilliant.
And he's talking about, a growing revolutionary spirit within Iran. Now it's kind of hard to gauge because a lot of the media outlets have been destroyed in these attacks. So, Brian, I guess where do you think, or where do you see this going in the near term?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I mean, I hope it slows down. I'm tired. We're all tired here. We would like to see at least the attacks from Iran slow down. The feeling is that we are we've made amazing advances, and we've achieved a lot. We're winning in terms of taking out the nuclear program or rendering it such that it really is not feasible for Iran to put together and launch nuclear weapons. But I don't know. I think there's always just this nagging concern about what don't we know? What might they do as they are increasingly cornered?
And this is where, as you said earlier, prayer comes in, because
Oh,
this
absolutely.
is why it's absolutely vital. John, what are the other thing? Well, John and Brian, because we've been listening to this. John, you pointed out a comment on a program yesterday. What do you think Turkey is going through Turkey's mind while all of this is going on, John? Brian, what do you think?
Well, I think Turkey is making plans. I watched Brian, Duran Spillman, and Michael Duran speak on the Just East podcast on JNS. And by the way, our friend Danny Seaman also did a great podcast on Mossad operations.
It was brilliant.
It was brilliantly done. But Duran and Duran were talking yesterday about Turkey, and Duran made a very interesting comment. And Brian, I think this relates to Israel, that Turkey's policy, the example that they used was North Korea produces more ammunition than all of Europe combined. Just North Korea. And so Europe has sort of taken this, well, we'll do soft power. We'll be nice to everybody and everything will be okay. And I do think this has a huge impact on how we look at how these Bible prophecies are going to unfold, because Europe talks a good game, but are they going to be able to do anything with declining demographics and that type of thing? But then Duran said, and I have some problems with Michael Duran on some issues. He's a little bit too pro-Turkey, but he's a realist on it. And he said Turkey has accomplished over the years of building what he called what did he say? Something like operational sovereignty.
Yes.
In other words, that and that Israel needs to do the same thing. Forget the U.S. You need to build your country so that you can fight a war if everybody abandons you. And Turkey has done that. And Duran Spielman made a very interesting comment later in that video. I'll put a link in the show notes. And he said, and maybe Turkey takes over Iran. And by the way, that sort of brings into play some of the prophecies, I think, in Daniel chapter 8, and that's for a whole nother program. But Brian, just some thoughts on you about Turkey and how it plays into this whole situation. By the way, there is supposed to be the Iranian foreign minister will be attending a meeting of the Organization of Islamic Countries in Turkey today.
Interesting.
Okay, now go ahead, Brian.
Well, we can expect Erdogan to continue to thoroughly condemn Israel. And of course, the headline here is his comment, I guess yesterday or very, very recently, saying that Netanyahu has now surpassed Hitler in the number of lives he's taken in his quote unquote genocidal pursuit of, I don't know, whatever. But, the rhetoric from Erdogan has become just over the top extreme. And I've heard you talk about this, and I think it's also obvious Erdogan has ambitions to be the head of a caliphate that takes over the world and brings in Islam. And that ambition has been, until just recently, it's gotten farther down the road from the imams in Iran. And now that they are losing ground, it looks to me like Erdogan is excited and hopes to step in and become the new leader or make Turkey the new leader of to bring in a caliphate, an Islamic worldwide government.
Well, it's very interesting. I forget where I was reading. Maybe it was in the Michael Duran and Duran Spielman program on JNS, where they said that we talk about the psychological impact in Israel, which is big, but there's a corresponding psychological impact in Iran, because here is Iran, the rhetoric all these years and the proxies have all been designed to get Israel. I do not understand why Tucker Carlson and these other isolationists ignore the facts of history.
Yeah, it's maddening.
In Iran and Iraq, back in the 1980s, fought an 8-year war that
They
really
sure did.
came to sort of a stalemate. And here is little tiny Israel really gaining operational superiority, at least in the airspace in Iran, in a week.
Yeah.
And that has to have a huge psychological impact on the Iranian. It probably doesn't affect the Iranian leadership because they're, Shia 12er Mahdi's coming if we cause chaos people. But among the Iranian people, they have to be looking at that and say,
Yeah. One of my favorite sites that appeared a few days ago was the explosion of Iran's sewer system in Tehran and literally flooding the streets with refuse. You can find this video very easily, videos of this. It's a river of sewage flowing down the streets of Tehran. I don't know, for some reason that reminded me of when God afflicted, who were they? The Palestinian group that took the Ark of the Covenant and they put it in the temple of their god Dagon, and God gave them all hemorrhoids. and so to see refuse going down the streets of Tehran is, to me, kind of in that same vein. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, hopefully, Tehran and the Imams of the Islamic Republic of Iran, hopefully they will fold. Yet on the other hand, they have a philosophy that I think is almost impossible for the West to understand and embrace, namely that they don't care if they create chaos from which it is impossible, humanly speaking, to escape, because they fully expect their whole theology, their whole eschatology is to, in fact, create that chaos to provoke the appearance of the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah, who will come and make all things right. So they are willing to be in a losing position and do whatever it takes and die, because for them that's victory, and they are hoping that their actions will provoke the appearance of this Antichrist.
But that's also a belief to some respect within Sunni Islam as well. I mean, there's been many have come. I mean, remember the big attack on the mosque in Mecca many years ago, where people, the guy who attacked it said he was the Mahdi, he was a Sunni Islamist. So there's a lot of people that there's sort of a unity, and you'll see a unity in the OIC meeting in Turkey today, where the Iranian foreign minister is attending, that they are unified against Israel. I mean, that's going to be pretty clear. We could go on and on and on. I'm going to go a little bit longer. I have an appointment that I'm, because of some issues at the house here, so I have to kind of be sensitive to that. My wife had to leave, so that's why I'm kind of looking at my phone and stuff. It's not that I'm not paying attention, but because we have people coming over to fix things at the house. So, I mean, Brian, just sort of just talk. Give us your thoughts on any number of topics that come to mind while we have you here.
I have been, I mean, living in this situation and experiencing it has been remarkable. And it's a difference between, I don't know, watching it on TV or reading a novel or reading history books and experiencing it. I realize that there are all kinds of things happening that even in the middle of it, I'm not aware of. And one of the most interesting parts of being in a nation at war is all the time in between attacks. We continue to go shopping. I went out yesterday and picked up some groceries. And you continue on with life, and at the same time you're waiting for the next wave and the next news report, knowing that there's an enemy out there that wants your complete and total destruction. I do think it's sometimes easy for evangelical believers who love the Bible to entirely look at what's going on here in an attempt to frame it. What does this mean? How does this fit? This can be frustrating to people living here going through it, because it feels like maybe the concern is more about theology and interpretation of the Bible than it is for the people themselves. And I think it's important to keep in mind that the best witness to Jews about the integrity of our faith is to genuinely, authentically care for them and engage with them. The mandate in the Bible to love our neighbors as ourselves doesn't come with an agenda. It doesn't mean we love them in as much as we, evangelize them. No, we're to love our neighbors regardless, and without an agenda. And that itself is a witness to the integrity of our faith. It is the most powerful one. The fact of the matter is, many Jews, if not most, know more about Christianity by far than Christians do. They certainly know 99.9% of they know more than 99.9% of Christians about certainly church history. And the fact that they are open to relate with Christians who support us is itself a miracle in light of that history. So in any case, I encourage those who are witnessing this and praying for Israel to engage authentically and not just theologically.
Brian, I want to thank you so much for saying that, because I just think you've said a very, very profound thing, because you're talking about humanity, friendships, and the fact that when people are going, how are you? Are they actually going to stand there and listen to the answer? You're absolutely right. When it's like, oh, we've got all these jigsaw pieces of Bible prophecy, that's what we want to put into place, but actually forget the humanity of, and having been in Jerusalem a few weeks ago, I hear you very, very loud. I hear you very loudly. I think what you've said is brilliant. Thank you for saying that.
There does appear to be, from my communication with people, that there is, well, let me approach it this way, Brian. How is Israeli society, is it divided, united about this? What's going on there?
It is remarkably united about the need to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. The nation is from everything I can tell is virtually 100% behind the effort. There continue, of course, to be political issues, but they have largely been muted. Israel has you look from the outside or even inside here, the arguments, the political rhetoric is just breathtakingly difficult and intense, and yet in a heartbeat, when the life of the nation is threatened, everybody coalesces and comes together. What will happen politically, I'm sure we'll go back to lots of infighting, but right now, the nation of Israel is, as far as I can tell, 100% behind what we are having to do in Iran. And the sense that I'm catching here is that finally we're doing it.
So it's very interesting. I appreciate your comment. I mean, sometimes we sort of take a detached. We sort of look at it as Israel as a place where our eschatological views are. It's like a laboratory for
Yes.
them to, we can kind of fit everything together. We're playing with a giant jigsaw piece puzzle, and we're trying to fit all of our pieces into our preconceived notions. And I think that I'm much less dogmatic now about how this thing works out, because we see a lot of different pieces. And I do believe that things that we haven't really focused on in Old Testament prophecies are going to, so I think this is Daniel chapter 12, and things are going to come alive. And we're going to say, oh, so that's how that's going to work out. And somebody made a great comment here, and maybe we can wrap up with some comments on this. Somebody said, Nebuchadnezzar repented and came to the Lord at some point. And that might have even shocked Daniel. So any thoughts on that, Mark and Brian?
Go, Brian. Go, Brian. I think I'd like your comment on that.
Nebuchadnezzar repented. God had to discipline him rather severely, for 7 years, was it? He was an animal,
Sure.
like an animal, and and then his senses were restored to him, and that's when he praised God. In fact, I don't think a lot of people know that Nebuchadnezzar is one of the authors of the Bible. He actually has a section in Daniel where he is writing, so yes, God can work in hearts and bring about great change. I think we are seeing that, or I think it's been happening. I don't know that we've been seeing it. That dynamic has been happening, I think, largely in Iran, among the Iranian people, not the leadership. For years now, there have been reports coming out that the fastest growing place for Christianity on the earth is in Iran. I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but I suspect that there has been a large revival, and people have been coming to faith in Yeshua over the years, and perhaps that's happening now. We probably won't know the degree to which that's happened and to the degree it's genuine for some time, but it does seem likely that's happening among the people of Iran.
It is that is very humbling to hear that, because it's true. I think many people are coming to Christ under circumstances that of persecution that frankly are shocking, and that in many ways we in the West can't relate to, even though I would say that persecution starting on I feel that here, but in one sense, but it's that humanity. Is the humanity, Brian, is a bit like saying our discussion is not entertainment. Our discussion is trying to inform, to support Israel and what's going on, and to pray. And that may be a controversial thing to say to some, like, all right, I'll say it, John. I'll say it. I'll be the one that get into trouble. Where sometimes people, they just want to get out there and bring some update on what's going on in Israel. But actually, it seems as though it's so detached from, we are discussing real people's lives on both sides.
Yeah.
On both sides.
That's huge. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And with Iran, the fight is not with the incredible Persian people. The fight is with the regime. And I commend politically, you know, when Bibi Netanyahu speaks and other generals, when they've been addressing the people of Iran in Farsi and all the rest, I commend them for that, because absolutely our fight is with this appalling regime. And they're doing it on behalf of all of us, which is something that I know the UK government doesn't want to admit.
Right. So anyway, so look, folks, we're gonna wrap this up right now. I just have a couple comments here. I appreciate you all gathering together at sort of late notice or short notice at a different time than what we do. Brian, you do work with what, endtimes.com, right?
Yeah, Tipping Point Ministries, endtimes.com, and I file a weekly video report with them that comes out every Tuesday.
Okay. And Mark does the Sutherland Report, and I've been on his program probably more than he cares to remember. And I do an update. I do weekly updates, and I have a prophecy roundtable on technocracy coming up June 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. You'll be seeing things posted about that with Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, Scott Townsend, and Pete Garcia. I think will be on this one. There's so much going on in that space as well. And if I would appreciate it if you would like, share, subscribe on our YouTube channel. It just helps our algorithms. We don't monetize our channel or anything. Everything's put up for free. But it's a very interesting time to be alive. And I keep thinking of what Yeshua said to his disciples when he was here the first time. He said, you know, the prophets long to live at the time that you live. And you ought to rejoice that you're living at this time. And I think that's probably a pattern for us, that we should see these things unfolding. I think it's going to be a rather, I just think it's going to be a little bit confusing as we go through this in the near term. So, Brian, Mark, any quick comments?
I do. I want to say, if anyone's listening who doesn't hear your weekly report, John, I want them to tune into you. I see reports others do, and you are singular. What you're doing is standalone. Nobody else is doing what you do in terms of giving basically an intelligence report. You call it a prophecy report, but you're giving us really, really sound analysis and intelligence about what's going on in America, but in the Middle East and in Israel, unlike anyone else out there. So I thank God for you. You are playing a hugely important role, and I encourage everyone to get behind you and listen to your weekly reports.
I was joking with Mark yesterday that my data is incomplete, but I think that the number of Iranian ballistic missiles fired into Israel is probably less than the number of breaking prophecy updates that I've seen over the last few days. And I don't mean that to be mean or anything like that.
No, but that's true. I think you're right.
But it's true. It's true.
It's sort of like ballistic missile incoming, prophecy update incoming, and
right.
That type of thing. So there's a lot of it. So I'm only joking because there's a lot of people really doing a lot of good work and hard work but I just find the whole thing to be rather daunting and confusing. And I think the early part of our comments was, it seemed like this has been going on for a year, but it was only like a week ago. It was like a week ago today, this evening. It's not even a full week yet since this started. And it's sort of like there could be books and books and books written about what's just happened in the last week. And there's been some miraculous things. I mean, the history books have yet to be written about the Israeli intelligence operation within Iran. And, they said that the thing in the Beeper attack and Hezbollah things took 10 years. This has been in the making for 20 years.
Yeah. That's why Danny Seaman's show with his amazing guest with the Mossad, ex-Mossad member and historian, it was a fantastic show. And John, yeah,
I'll put links to the
put that in the
JNS
link,
programs
put in
we
that
talked
in
about.
the links as well, because people will be smiling from ear to ear when they listen to that, and it is an encouragement. But yeah,
Right. Well, anyway, look, everybody, thank you so much. Be in prayer for Israel. Be in prayer for the people of Iran. I mean, be in prayer for all the people in the Middle East. And ultimately, we want them to come to faith in Messiah of Israel, Jesus. And this is going to be a very interesting time as we watch all of this play out. Pray for our president. Pray for our Congress. There's Trump. I mean, there's resolutions being introduced to keep Trump from acting, and it's and that might pass. So who? I mean, it's insane. It's just happening so quickly. So Brian, thank you. We'll do this again. Mark, thank you again. I'm going to click on the end in the stream. Everybody, thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. And then, and I'll say goodbye to you guys on the other side. Give me just one moment here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.